Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I know most of you. My name is Mary Muliett with the Battle Creek Community Foundation. We are overjoyed to have you here this morning. So thank you for being here. We know calendars are full. We know we need to set a new date, Teresa. And the fact that you're here speaks volumes about our shared commitment in this community, about strengthening the sector in our nonprofit work and living your mission each day. It's so meaningful to see leaders, donors, board members here, and our community partners gathered together. We're grateful for your time and your willingness to engage with us for this day of learning. We say all the time these days at the Battle Creek Community Foundation that we're here for and with our community. We hope today feels like a day that's built for you. BCCF is grounded in the belief that our work is not done for the community alone. It's done with the community together. Over the past 2 years, we've engaged our sector leaders, our donors, board members, community partners, and residents in our community. We listened carefully to what's been working, and we listened just as carefully, if not more carefully, to where expectations from us were not being met for community. What we heard was very consistent. People are desiring clarity. Our community wants to understand how decisions are made at the foundation, how resources are stewarded, and how trust is built and protected over time. Overall, we heard a desire for transparency in our daily practice. So we're here with you to meet that moment today and going forward. What we heard from community, from listening to each of you, required us to look inward, assess, and be honest, to set ourselves back onto a forward course as your community foundation. We want to be clear, we are forever committed to moving ahead in transparency with our community and with a clear commitment to excellent stewardship for all of our resources that are entrusted to us. We are stepping squarely into the role as a funder, convener, collaborator, and overall your community foundation. This is a commitment now and into the future. As part of that commitment, our team has taken a deep look at our operations, our spending, and our role within the broader ecosystem. That work included examining how we have historically used our funds, how we have supported larger community projects, and how those choices aligned or didn't always align with the needs of our nonprofit sector. We're deeply grateful for the many important projects that launched in our community, and at the same time, we can say with humility that some of those efforts may have been better supported by strengthening the nonprofit organizations that operate and sustain services every day. Over the past 2 years, we've learned a great deal through this community input and through close review of our operations. That learning that learning has come from nonprofit leaders, community partners, and from within our own organization. Our board and our team are here today to learn alongside you and continue building trust, and strong relationship. As a result of this learning, BCCF has made some internal changes. We've taken a close look at our stewardship responsibilities and made the decision to spend less on ourselves and direct more resources outward through our grant making and to our nonprofit organizations. You've heard us talk about in the last year that we were grant making 44% increased over the year prior. That commitment continues. In full transparency, since the pandemic, there were significant investments made. And responsible stewardship requires allowing those investments to grow and build for the community in perpetuity. That is our commitment. One example of a way we're stepping back in that space a bit is that we aren't doing impact investments today. I've talked to many of you about that. We need to allow those investments to grow and build back for the community over time. So we've assessed all of our actions in the leadership roles that we have stepped into for the community. And we've committed that now, when a leadership role and opportunity to support comes about, we're going to look for the experts. We're going to look for you and think about how to lift our nonprofit partners up into helping solve the problem instead of us taking on a program or a center because there's a need. We are working intentionally to create access for organizations that may not have previously understood how to engage with BCCF. It's a real commitment that we have as an organization today. And to build authentic, objective relationships with all charitable organizations and stakeholders across our community. These focused decisions reflect discipline and doubling down on our commitment as your community foundation. Again, squarely in the role of a foundation for Battle Creek and our surrounding areas. These decisions reflect our steadfast commitment to long-term impact. All right, so looking ahead, BCCF is focused on a future where we support nonprofit service providers in the roles that matter most, as a funder, as a thought partner, as a convener, and as a collaborator. Overall, we are your partner, and you are the experts in the mission work you lead every single day, and we honor that. That work brings us to a significant moment for our organization. We have reimagined our mission statement and defined a vision statement and values for our work. Again, that commitment to transparency, we want you to see where we're going and what we're standing for. We encourage you to take a peek at the new mission, vision, values on our website. They're up. And then invite you to join our community convenings. There's a half sheet on your table that talks about the dates, which will happen in June with our team. Those conversations will deepen how these statements, the mission and vision and values, came to life and the why behind them, which again has everything to do with the input our community gave us. All of you gave us input that led us to that refreshed mission statement, vision statement, and values. The feedback we received from the community shaped how we understand our role and our responsibilities and how we see our direction forward. All of this is why today's agenda looks the way it does. The topics we're exploring: accountability, transparency, fiduciary responsibility, and sound fiscal health. These reflect the realities that nonprofit leaders and boards navigate every single day. And they mirror both state and national expectations around strong stewardship, operational transparency, and the responsible use of our entrusted resources. These are complex areas that are often misunderstood or differently understood across organizations, particularly as financial models, funding structures, and compliance expectations continue to evolve in our landscape. These topics deserve time, clarity, and shared learning, and we hope that this time allows you to have that time. Today is designed to create that space, allowing nonprofit leaders and our board members across the room to be best equipped in stewarding resources responsibly, managing risk thoughtfully, and sustaining impact over time. We hope you see our vision and our refreshed commitments. We look forward to dialoguing with you about them more over the days to come. And in June, please join us at one of our events. So see those half cards, they're blue, there's like a blue teal color. They've got the 2 dates that we've locked in. We will also set a virtual date at a later time for those that can't be in person, but we would really love to see it in person at one of those events. So save the date. Okay, and you know I could just keep going, right? Everybody in this room knows I can talk, so I'm going to say, without further ado, I'd love to welcome Elizabeth Schulteis, our Executive Vice President at the Battle Creek Community Foundation. She's going to share more about next steps in our time together today. But first, I'm going to thank you for all you do each day for our community. Please give yourselves and Elizabeth a round of applause as she joins me at the podium.
Good morning, and thank you, Mary, and thank you again, all of you, for joining us this morning. In just a moment, we're going to move into our breakfast session, our behind the curtain conversation, where our grants team will walk you through how grant making works, what gets funded, how decisions are made, and how we think about stewarding resources. It's meant to be a transparent, practical look at the system, not just what happens, but why. And we offer that in the same spirit that guides today's convening: openness, clarity, and shared responsibility. Before we transition, I do want to quickly lift up a couple of opportunities that connect to this broader work across our community. First, many of you have been part of or are familiar with the Aligning for Impact work led by BCTRHT over the past year. That effort has really been about listening to nonprofit voices, understanding shared challenges, and strengthening how we work together across sectors. As a next step in that work, there will be a nonprofit advocacy breakfast on May 8th from 7:30 to 10 a.m. at Washington Heights United Methodist Church. It comes at an important time as the state enters budgeting season, and it's designed to make sure nonprofit perspectives are part of those conversations. It's also a chance to bring together nonprofit leaders, funders, corporate partners, and elected officials, really to strengthen relationships and build some shared momentum around advocacy. Space is limited, so if it's something that you're interested in, I'd encourage you to take a look at information. So the centerpieces, one side of them has information about this, because I believe registration ends tomorrow. So if you're interested, act now. In addition to that, I also want to make sure you're aware of the ongoing training opportunities through the nonprofit network made possible by the Miller Foundation. These are some really strong sessions coming up, from board governance to fundraising and AI to leadership development for board chairs and executive committees. Those are practical skill building opportunities, and we encourage you to take advantage of them, and you can find them on the Nonprofit Network's website. All of these efforts, today's convening, the advocacy breakfast, the training opportunities, are really part of the same goal: strengthening the nonprofit sector and supporting the work you do every day. So with that, we'll welcome my colleagues, Jennifer and Kira, to tell you a little bit more about what happens behind the curtain.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Behind the Curtain presentation on how grant decisions are made and resources are stewarded. One of the clearest messages we have heard from the community is that grant making can seem opaque or hard to understand, even when relationships are strong and intentions are good. Many people have told us they want a clearer understanding how funding decisions are made, what shapes what funding is available, and why funding outcomes can look the way they do. We will talk through all of this during today's session. It is our commitment to transparency in action. My name is Jennifer Van Valkenburg, and I'm Senior Grants and Impact Officer at BCCF. I've had the privilege of working at BCCF for 13 years, with 6 of those serving our community in the grant-making area. And I am joined today by my colleague and co-presenter, Kira.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kira Hargrove. I'm a program officer on our grant-making team here at BCCF. I've been with the Community Foundation for 4 years in May, and after I left an almost 10-year career in veterinary medicine. In addition to the work that I do with our nonprofit partners here in the room and in our community broadly, I also work closely with our donor-advised fund portfolio, and I work with our young people on our Youth Alliance Committee.
Today, we're going to show the machinery of grant making, and we hope you find this information valuable and informative. We have several goals for today's session, and they are to review how competitive grant funding was distributed in the most recently completed fiscal year and what the application pool looked like. We'll talk about how grant decisions reflect financial and legal realities. We'll also talk about how endowed funds support community priorities and review restricted funds versus the more flexible grant funds. In addition, we'll review why some assets create value but are not usable for grant making. We'll also review how long-term commitments are managed over time and shape yearly funding. Lastly, we'll share what we learned in year one of the updated and expanded donor-advised newsletter opportunity. Today's focus is not on specific grant outcomes, but is geared to help everyone understand the broader framework that shapes grant-making decisions. Our hope is that by focusing on the system itself, we create a shared understanding of how grant-making works at BCCF. Because there is so much meaningful programming still to come today, we want to be thoughtful about time and keep moving through the presentation rather than taking questions and answers during this segment. But if questions arise, though, please seek out myself and Kira. We welcome the opportunity to connect after and answer any questions you may have.
So before we get into numbers, here's the most important point that we want everyone to leave with. Grant making is not simply choosing what to fund, it is stewardship, honoring donor intent, legal and ethical restrictions, long-term commitments, and sustainability while making the best decisions we can in a given year. So when we talk about what funding is available, we actually mean what is truly available for grant making in this specific year, consistent with donor intent and prudent stewardship. That reality can be hard to see from the outside, so our job today is to make that a little bit more visible for you. So let's start with a transparent snapshot of our competitive grant funding from our most recently completed fiscal year, which ended on March 31st. BCCF facilitates 2 competitive grant rounds each year to support programs doing important work impacting the greater Battle Creek community. Funding decisions for these requests are made by BCCF's grant-making committees comprised of community volunteers. During this past fiscal year, we received a total of 62 eligible applications from 58 unique or different organizations. Of these applying organizations, about 25% were new to seeking funds from BCCF, while 75% were returning applicants. The total amount of funding requested last year was just over $965,000. Just over $463,000 were awarded to 43 different programs through BCCF's competitive grant-making budget, which was the full allowable spendable of both our unrestricted grant-making funds as well as our donor-restricted field of interest funds, where a grant request aligned with the fund's purpose. In addition to our annual grant-making budget last year, the generosity of our donor-advised funds provided an additional $93,000 to support 7 different requests, fully funding 4 of them, meaning that we were actually able to support 47 different programs last year. If we examine the success rate of our applications, not including the generous funding through our donor-advised funds, about 70% of applications receive funding of around 75% of their request or higher. The average grant size last fiscal year, which is relatively consistent with awards given over the past few years, was just under $11,000. Last year, just over half of funded requests aligned primarily with our focus area of livable communities, followed by health at 30% and education at 19%. It's important to note that many projects touch multiple focus areas, but for today's purposes, we're only looking at each project's primary designation. In comparison, let's look at our data from our most recent grant round submissions. This is the first grant round of our fiscal year, and we have 1 remaining grant cycle this year. At the end of the presentation, we'll share upcoming deadlines with you so that you know when our next grant round is. Now, we don't have the funding information to share with you yet, as our committees still have to meet, but we can share the following. We received 29 eligible applications from 29 unique organizations. Of those organizations, 31% are new applicants to BCCF and 69% are returning. The total requested funds add up to $446,609, and we have an anticipated grant budget for our first grant round of about $200,000 to $250,000. The average size of a grant request was about $15,400. Of all the grant requests, if we're looking at their primary focus areas, understanding, again, that many fall under more than one focus area, we have about 31% that fall under health, 31% that fall under education, and 38% that fall under livable communities. So, here's a candid reality that shows up in almost every grant cycle. Demand often exceeds what's available. That doesn't mean that applications are weak. It means that the community's needs and ambitions are larger than the funding that's truly available in a given year. We also want to be transparent that many high-quality applications may not be funded, not because the work isn't valuable, but because of alignment, timing, restrictions on available dollars, and the obligation to honor prior commitments. Now, to understand why demand exceeds what's available, we need to talk about our assets, what they represent, and how different funds function.
This is a snapshot of our assets in our most recently audited fiscal year, which was last year. BCCF's assets total just over $138 million, and the assets are broken down by fund type. Given the size of our assets, it's natural to think that those resources may be broadly available for grants. But I want to highlight that our grant-making dollars are on the black bar on the graph. That's the third bar down, and that's the unrestricted and field of interest fund line, which is 19% of our total assets. This is still a sizable amount, but other factors have to be taken into account that impact the amount of funding available for grant making. These funds are endowed. This means the assets are invested for long-term community benefit. They are governed by our spending policy that determines how much can be distributed from the fund each year. The spending policy calculation is based on 4% of the fund's 16-quarter rolling average. This spending policy balances current impact with future long-term sustainability, enabling the fund to remain in perpetuity. Other factors impact the amount available for grant making too. Specifically, field of interest funds. Some of these funds contribute to discretionary grant making, but at least half of the field of interest funds we hold are highly donor restricted and may only support a specific issue, a population, a particular geography, or even to one or more or multiple named nonprofits. When a donor entrusts us with a gift for a specific cause or purpose, whether it's to support cancer research or for a scholarship, they are making a pact with us. These funds are legally and ethically locked to that cause. Honoring these restrictions isn't just a policy, it's our promise that every dollar does exactly what the donor intended. Honoring donor intent is both a legal obligation and a core part of our fiduciary duty. All of these elements impact the available grant-making funding in a given year and have to be balanced with other long-term funding commitments that BCCF has, which will be reviewed on the next slide. Another area of our assets that I'll also highlight are donor-advised funds. We have over 100 donor-advised funds, and these funds represent 8% of our assets. Donor-advised funds are an important part of local generosity and community grant-making. At the same time, donor-advised funds are governed by donor intent and donor recommendations. They do not function as a discretionary pool of funds the foundation can deploy freely. They serve a different role, supporting giving aligned with donor priorities within charitable and policy requirements. We think of donor-advised funds as a powerful engine for local generosity. They help expand the total pool of resources available in our community, bringing in more funding than we would have otherwise. While these funds are housed at the foundation, they are not a blank check. The foundation acts as the fund steward, but the donor or fund advisor is the one who recommends where the money goes. Our job is to balance the donor's personal passions with legal and charitable standards. A donor-advised fund grant starts when a donor shares with us that they'd like to suggest a grant from the fund they advise to support a specific charitable cause or organization. Our team does the homework to ensure the organization is a qualified charity and that the request aligns with policies. Once approved, we facilitate the grant award, turning a donor's idea into real-world community impact. Because these grants are driven by donor intent, they are most effective when a project aligns specifically with the donor's personal interests or their own mission.
So, as Jennifer mentioned, another part of what is available that's often invisible are our long-term commitments. In addition to annual grants, we manage commitments that extend across years. We have multi-year renewable grants and sponsorships, larger investments that are intentionally phased over time tied to systems change initiatives, and endowed distributions that support specific organizations or purposes annually. When we make a multi-year renewable grant or sponsorship, we are pre-committing future dollars contingent on certain eligibility requirements being met. Renewable grants reduce flexibility in future years because stewardship requires us to honor commitments already made. We want to be transparent about this because long-term commitments are often a sign of deep partnership and sustained impact. They can also create the impression that less is available in the current year for new grants. Both of these things can be true at the same time. For example, multi-year renewable sponsorships of just over $60,000 over 3 years means that just over $60,000 is already committed in each year of that term. We're currently supporting 71 different organizations or community projects through our renewable sponsorship program. We also have multi-year renewable grants being made from the Glenn Cross Fund. Just over $70,000 was distributed this year to support operating and infrastructure expenses for over 8 different art and culture organizations in the greater Battle Creek area. We also have long-term renewable grants that have been made to support systemic change in the community, such as from the Bueller Children's Fund for the First Home, First Teacher initiative, and most recently announced from the Nursing Clinic of Battle Creek Fund to support the RX Kids program. Both of these commitments were made due to their collective impact and their addressing of a high priority community need. We'll be publishing later this year the guidelines of how that funding was determined. Additionally, an endowed organizational fund is the ultimate long-term commitment in that these funds are designated to support specific organizations only, which is meaningful, stable support, but not flexible for other uses. Additionally, we have several field of interest funds that operate similar to organizational funds, with the primary difference being that they support multiple organizations annually rather than a single organization. Our responsibility is to manage these commitments with clear reporting, ongoing monitoring, and accountability, so that promises made are promises kept.
So here's the key takeaway. Only a portion of what we steward is available for annual grant making, and the portion that becomes available is shaped by donor intent, restrictions, long-term commitments, and specifically for endowed assets, the annual spending policy distribution. We have to honor the purpose of our funds before we can allocate them to possibilities. So next, we also wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the expanded donor-advised newsletter opportunity. We are always looking at ways to refine and continuously improve our processes to best meet the community needs. We updated the process to improve clarity, consistency, and stewardship. Last year was the first year that the donor-advised newsletter opportunity was open to all Greater Battle Creek area organizations, and it's an avenue for organizations to share needs with fund advisors of donor-advised funds held at BCCF. As with any new opportunity, year one came with some lessons, and I'll share what changed, what worked well, and what we are refining. So what changed? The donor-advised newsletter application moved to our online grant portal, and was expanded to all area nonprofits. Also, grant requests were presented to donors in an improved digital format. What worked well? Moving the application to the BCCF grant portal provided consistency for applicants, and it also provided additional opportunities for area organizations to seek and potentially receive funding for important community priorities. This opportunity also created an avenue for organizations to seek funding for projects that may not be eligible through our other grant-making opportunities. Any type of need that a nonprofit may have can be requested through the donor-advised newsletter, including a capital project, a program request, or operating request. Of note, there are restrictions for certain types of nonprofits related to capital requests, so we encourage you to reach out to have a conversation with us before applying for a capital request through the DAN, and we're happy to provide that guidance. What we learned from this last year and what we will refine. We learned that providing clearer guidance for applicants can be helpful in understanding what request amounts may be recommended when seeking donor-advised support. So we'll take this opportunity to share with you that the average grant amount supported through the donor-advised newsletter is between $5,000 to $15,000. Also, we currently have about 5% of our donor-advised funds regularly engaged with supporting grant requests through the donor-advised newsletter opportunity, and we are looking at opportunities to increase this engagement. And lastly, we'll be conducting a donor engagement survey in this fiscal year to better understand fund advisor interests and priorities.
So, all this to say, transparency doesn't remove disappointment if an important project doesn't receive funding, but it does help people understand why decisions are made and what constraints shape them. When there's an understanding about how our grant making works, applicants can better align proposals with what's truly available. Our partners can plan more realistically. Our conversations are grounded in shared facts, and trust increases because decisions hopefully feel less mysterious. We believe that letting you see behind the curtain is part of accountable stewardship. It reflects the same principles that we're advocating for across the nonprofit sector in our community: clarity, integrity, and responsible management of resources entrusted to us. We want to thank you for taking the time to engage in our presentation in the spirit of transparency and shared responsibility. There will be a one-page explainer, frequently asked questions that will be emailed to you after the conference today. And so we'll encourage you to review those materials and continue the conversation with us throughout this convening and beyond. As a reminder, we're not taking questions at the end of this segment to keep the program running on time, but if you do have questions, especially ones that relate to your organization or a specific situation, our team will be available throughout the day for the conversation and follow-up, or you can always reach out to us and set up some time to meet. Now, before we end the session today, we felt it was important to share what our grant opportunities are for the remainder of our fiscal year. These opportunities and more details about them are available on our website, bccfoundation.org, which you can reach by scanning this QR code. First grant round of the year, as we mentioned, is underway, but some other opportunities to seek funding this year include our donor-advised newsletter, or our grant catalog, as we were transitioning to call it. The next application will open on June 17th with a deadline of July 15th, and then one on December 16th at a deadline of January 12th. We also have our fall competitive grant round. The application will open on August 24th with a letter of intent deadline on September 9th. Very important to note, we've shared it, but we'll share it again here, that the letter of intent is new to our grant making process. So if you have questions about the LOI, please check out our website, read our grantee partner resource guide, call us and have a conversation. We're happy to help you get on the same page. And as always, we do have our mini grant program, which we accept those applications on a rolling basis, and you can apply for that at any time. So I believe now we're going to transition to a short break until about 9:15. Yeah, and that's when Robin Farabee with Clark Hill will present our keynote address on accountability, transparency, and fiduciary responsibility in nonprofit leadership. we'll see you all back at 9:15.